So I hear from a lot of antique dealers that the younger generation doesn't appreciate antiques, but it doesn't sound like you guys agree with that.
If you're talking about the 30s, they still are interested. I feel the same way. I mean, I've practically lived in London and Paris shopping, and we're working on a project now in London, and we're buying furniture. But I don't mean to be a Cassandra. I've loved my relationship with England, which has always been an ideated issue for me. But I think that times are changing, and I think that, and I'm not being negative, I'm positive. I think it's very exciting. But when I mentioned the population change that's taking place, it's globalization. I mean, you can have someone from India living next door to you. I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and there was no one except us. That's over. It's finished. It's a global world, and everyone is coming into it, and it's going to change style. It's going to change design. It's going to change the way we live, because I just mentioned those almost 10 billion people. The ethos of what we have designed and desired is going to change. I think I sound like a prophet. I'm not. But it's something. But it's something. It's something that I think about a lot, about where I've been and where I'm going in America and the West. And it's changing. It's exciting to be able to go to China and work. Is it exciting to go to Mexico to work, to Brazil, to wherever you go? You have another world than I grew up with outside of Philadelphia, which was very comforting, but it's not. It's different today. Everybody's all over Hell's Half Acre, and it's exciting.
I don't think there's anything more exciting, though, than actually seeing sort of a beautiful direct-to-our table with a Rothko. I mean, like it's that thing that magical thing that happens when you take things from two totally different spaces and put them together. Sometimes they don't meld and they have no reference to each other. But there's some times where that just is the magic that happens in a space. Also opposite colors. I mean, it's very much, the same thing. You were great at that too.
You're good at that.
A lot of stuff.
You're good at a lot of stuff. I think it's really about breaking the rules. You have to know the rules to be able to break them, sort of, and that's where that's where the problem comes in when people think they can decorate for themselves. They don't understand scale or sometimes color, and they saw a picture and think that they can create that, but it's not really true. But I think exactly what Windsor's saying is just the juxtaposition of new and old, precious and throwaway. And that's what really creates an amazing interior, I think. It's not about all antique or all modern. It's about a mix, and especially now. Whereas I think before, a lot of contemporary interiors were very cold. And now so many things look contemporary because they do have an antique thrown in. And I think I just see more and more of that, and that's what clients respond to right now.
So in terms of the mix, I mean, I think more than ever, there's been an emphasis on mixing high and low. Are there certain things that you would never go low on? Like what are the things you'd never skimp on?
Well, I never say never, because just check out Tony Duquette's house and his pagoda-covered, hubcap-covered pagoda towers. And, he was so amazing and such an influence to me. And there at his house, I mean, he made chandeliers out of like juice cups, I remember. And
yeah, the pagodas are made out of egg cartons.
And those hubcaps on top.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard to say never, but I don't think you can, there's some things that you can't have cheap upholstery. I mean, you can't have it. But having said that, I'm sure someone could make it look good. Surely Tony could.
Windsor, are there certain things that you would never skimp on in a job?
I would always buy new mattresses.
No comment.
And that would be about it. I mean, I think everything's up for grabs. If it has great design, really knows no boundaries, and I just think that there's a small object that seems inconsequential, but can become extraordinary if it's juxtaposed with something else that brings out its beauty. I don't discriminate against anything.
David?
I totally agree. I mean, I just think it's a mixed world. I think it's not a mixed up world, it's a mixed world. People are coming together, their views are different. I had, fabrics. I had someone from India in the office that we work with. I mean, that would have never happened 25 years ago. I mean, you're reaching out to all of these different sources, and they bring something to you. But so do clients. Some of the things we've set up here, I agree. I think clients are much more involved in the taste and the style of what goes into a house. They're much more educated than they used to be. Sometimes it's painful.
I would always much rather have an educated client, though. So much easier,
Yeah.
so much better.
So tell us a little about your design process. Another thing that struck me looking at those slides is that you have some very big rooms to tackle. So where do you start? You know, when you're doing a grand room that incorporates, you know, lots of different seating areas and has to address many different aspects to one's life. Is it with the floor plan? Is it with the...
Architecture defines great rooms, and great architecture provides for great rooms. And I've just had a long history of architecture and knowing history. And, you know, because I've taught, the greatest house in America, modern, is Falling Water. It is, I could cry when I think about that house. It is so beautiful. At the same time, you can go and look at a Georgian house and think, God, that's beautiful. But that's the kind of conflict that we all sense to a certain extent. I think Falling Water's winning. But that does not preclude the inclusion in a job of things that are exotic, that come from other places. Rattan in rooms are wonderful. There's all these extraordinary things from other spaces, and sometimes it's very difficult to not have them. But if you have a discipline, I think great architecture and interiors requires discipline. And yes, there are these objects from other places and other things of travel, but nevertheless, there's a grid to a great room. There always has been, and there always will be. And it's knowing how to edit as much as it is add.
Michelle, where do you start?
Well, I kind of like Windsor. I really start a little bit with my client's lifestyle because I really want the client to feel happy and comfortable in the home. But having said that, I totally agree with David as well, because if the architecture is bad, you've got to fix that first. And then really I try to incorporate into the job how the client's going to live there. And like Windsor as well, I'm seeing that clients don't ever use the dining room. So, we go with sort of what works for the client and how it works. Everything seems more loftish in a way, even though it's actually not a loft. So things are going a little bit more that way. And architecture and lifestyle, I think, are really important.
Yeah, always comes from lifestyle for me. I think that over the last several years I've been witnessing, we're kind of anthropologists in a way, because we get to see how people live in their homes and what their patterns are and who's successful and why and who's not successful. And I noticed when Darren and I had this conversation about the house that I was building, I was obsessed with the fact that all of my clients, not all, I shouldn't say that's not fair, but a very high percentage of my clients that had built these houses that had these sort of massive master wings with his and her separate showers and baths, and were eventually getting separate houses. And all of my clients who shared a master sort of suite and dressing area were staying together. So I thought, well, there's something to that. What an awesome, opportunity to really have that bird's eye view. So how do you, analyze that, and how do you use that to set people up for success in designing those areas? And I don't care how good you are on a BlackBerry, you cannot text and brush your teeth at the same time. So it's the best time for communication in terms of a couple, So at the beginning of the day, if my husband and I didn't see each other at the beginning and the end of the day, we would never see each other. And that's where we sort of regroup. That's where we talk about the challenges. That's where I get in trouble for the credit card. It's like the time that, you sort of, mend fences, if you went to sleep, not happy with each other. So it's a critical time. And if in the architecture, it's designed to where you're in, complete different stratospheres, you're not really set up for success. So I think lifestyle is by far, it's the first thing that I'm looking at. I'm really kind of spending time with the family and seeing sort of their patterns and what really drives them. I do this sort of questionnaire by room of what their hopes and dreams are for that space from a purely functional standpoint. And I'm finding more and more that they want to incorporate activities and multiple things into one room or one space. So it comes from that for me.